All right. Hello and welcome back to a special episode of the USL Show. It is just me, Kaylor, today. So please don't turn it off too early. Thanks. Um, we have a fun episode where we're going to talk about W League. We're talking about League Two, and we're going to touch a little bit on the Y League. And some of you might be saying, the Y League, what is that? I promise we'll get there. Stay tuned for it. Before we get too far, I want to thank our wonderful patrons John Hunt, Frank Anthony, Aaron J., Christopher Cohn, Harry Austin, John Fuller, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Duder, Noah Telford, Alberto Aguilar, Jeremy Churchman, Stephen Howard, Rion Lacara, Tim Knox, NF Reg 30, MOS, and Kunal Patel. Thank you guys so much for sponsoring us. And thank you to Goals TV for sponsoring this episode. Check out everything that's going to be over at Goals TV. There's a chance you're watching this on Goals TV. So thank you for already making a free account. You go over there right now and make an account. If you don't like it, you'll get your money back. It's free. You didn't have to pay. Anyway, before I just dive into all that, let's talk to a special guest we have here. If you are watching this, you've seen him. He's already on the screen. But if you're just listening to it, you have no idea who's here. I am talking to the senior vice president of like the youth and pre-professional sections of the USL. I'm talking to someone who grew up in my neck of the woods with Birmingham and Dothan. We're going to talk about that a little bit as well. And D1 athlete. Don't forget you like Evansville legend, Joel Nash. Joel, how you doing, man?
I'm doing wonderful, Kaylor. Thanks for the far too kind of words, but I'm excited to be here and get to chat with you. And I'm sure we won't talk too much about Alabama. That'll bore too many people. We'll focus on the beautiful game today. Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
despite me being on here, there's not a very big Alabama contingency, so they're probably just like, "Oh, great, what are we about to hear about?" Listen, you don't have to worry about it too much. Um, so let's talk about just your role within the league, senior vice president of youth and pre-professional, all that stuff. What does that entail?
It's always a good question. And to be honest, I think in some ways I'll take every new opportunity to maybe explain it a little bit different. We're like this wonderful sport, it's always evolving as well. So I'll leave it on that one. I've been at USL for over 9 years. So I think the growth of the sport, the growth obviously within USL and the ecosystem, I've just been grateful to be a part of it. And I think that's part of where my role comes from. But most importantly, within this role, we have obviously a unique and wonderful structure, not only with our professional leagues, but also our pre-professional and youth leagues, which I know we'll get into. So within the youth and pre-professional space, which I'll save some of that for when we get into it, strategic direction is obviously a core component, the whole see the forest behind the trees vision that we have to have, and making sure that helping the incredible people that work with individual leagues day to day, make sure that what they're doing, what we are working to accomplish with our clubs on an annual day-to-day basis also aligns with where we want to take these leagues and the sport within our purview in years to come. And then a lot of that also pairs with our owners. If it's owners at a pre-professional club level, those owners are my top priority to make sure that relationship, that the opportunity we have at a league to support them, to correct where needed, but most importantly to bring them along with those visions, that strategy that I talked about. And then from our USL Youth League, which I know you mentioned, those don't have owners, they're youth clubs, and a majority are non-for-profits. It's still managing those relationships and understanding where that league can go, or really we call it a platform, where that platform can go as well from a strategic standpoint.
So just kind of thinking as someone, so my background, education, I do the teaching thing. And the idea of having to have relationships with well over, when we're talking about those owners, 150, 200, and if you include the youth clubs, like 250, 300 people, and having to have those in-depth relationships, not just to keep them in the league, but just to make sure that their players are healthy and happy and getting what they deserve out of it. What does that look like for you on a day-to-day basis?
Again, a great question, and I think also a healthy amount of accountability. Where whether it's the adage of splitting myself in half or adding more hours to a day, things like that. There's always room for improvement. Even from a personal standpoint, but it's sort of from a representing all of the individuals that work with our clubs, from sporting department to a league operations department, from an expansion department, from a social and comms and a PR. All those individuals carry out the same level of relationship in their own purviews, and within reason. The hope is that I can steer that from the very front. So, like anything, you've got deeper connections with some than others, and that's just part of the relationship world that we have. We also want to find ways other than just simply getting on phone calls, which to be quite honest is the most rewarding, the most valuable, because there is enough of that connection, and obviously seeing people in person, as we'll have some staff go out to the W League national semis this weekend and final, and when League Two comes around to playoffs, we send people out, and I attend those as well. So getting in person is a big deal, but we also want to foster those relationships through the departments that we have at USL that can service our clubs and be there for our clubs, both in season and out of season. So that relationship front is something that we try and cover, obviously, in a multitude of ways, so that, again, the richness of service we're providing our clubs is at the level that we hope they expect, and they'll tell us if we need to improve, and we work to do that.
You mentioned the USL national semifinals, so let's just talk about that. These playoffs, I don't think there's any other word than you can say is just successful. I've watched all but 3 of the matches as they were happening, and they've all been incredible. And I think there's been a just large push in how much talent is in the league, and they're really showcasing it. There's a lot of fun clubs that were in this playoff. I mean, we're heading out to Oakland next week, so I'm a little partial to Oakland Soul, but Olympia has been stunning this year. The 2 Storms, that was a fun matchup to see Colorado and then California just face off against each other. Yeah. Minnesota Aurora and Indy 11 cannot stop playing each other. They just always end up in each other's paths, and that's just so much fun. And then Riverlight and Detroit City making the playoffs for the first time in W League history for them. And then Riverlight brand new on the scene, and they've been incredible. And that's before we even get over to the east side of things, where, NC Courage U23s have been here forever. Lancaster Inferno have been here, just doing it for a long time. Long Island Rough Riders have been doing this forever. Same thing with Eagle FC. They don't miss the playoffs ever. They are just continuously here. Florida Elite Soccer Academy in Asheville City. I'm very partial to Asheville City. It's where my wife lived for a long time. I love that club. They have just done everything right. And then you have AHFC Royals. They also seem to do all the right things in developing their players, but not to be outdone by Tennessee SC, who have U.S. women's national team, talent on the squad. You can talk for hours about all these teams, but it comes down to just the 4: Colorado Storm, Detroit City, NC Courage, U23s, and Tennessee SC. From the league top down level, how have the playoffs gone from your point of view?
Well, first of all, you gave so many great shout outs, so I appreciate that. I know the clubs will, because they deserve it, and so many others. I think what's great, and I was thinking about this this morning, the 4 that we have left are a really unique representation in a couple ways. You've got Courage looking to get to one extra level, aka lifting the trophy that they just fell short last year in Indianapolis against Indy 11. You've got Tennessee SC, who made playoffs last year, has been super strong both regular seasons. They're looking obviously to go even further than where they've gone before. You've got a newcomer to the league in a brand new division in Colorado Storm with our Mountain Division, which is always exciting to see a new division, which we're still in a growth curve. This is year 3, which I'm sure we can get into. We still want to see this platform provide those opportunities for the youth national team, former national team players, international stars. So we want this platform to continue to be a space for young women to grow their talents, for young girl soccer players to see a touch point as to where they could maybe achieve in their career. So to see the Mountain Division have a representation with Colorado Storm is terrific. And then ultimately Detroit City, with the level of support that they get from their incredible fans, each one has its own unique story. And I think that's always wonderful when you can have that representation in playoffs, particularly in the Final Four, where, no matter what, we're going to have a new club lift the W League trophy this year, which is always exciting. Obviously, we are unbiased at the league level, whether we all have our own quirks from where we're from to the people we work with, to brands we like, to stories we learn. But we're just super excited and grateful that we've got such a strong group of final clubs this year in the W League for year 3. And we're excited to see what stories come out of it, see who performs on the field, and we hope that all the players, coaches, all the people at these clubs that are now in the Final Four already know how terrific they've done this season. But the beauty of sport is, there's eventually one winner. And so we're excited to see everybody compete for that.
So one thing that always intrigues me about what a league has to do, right? And this is not just USL and, MLS, NPSL, UWS, and, NPS or WPSL, like whatever league. You can throw it to the Premier League, the Bundesliga. There's a sense of obviously promoting their clubs, promoting their players, but also storytelling of itself. How do you guys kind of manage telling the stories of these clubs, especially as we get down to these semifinals? How much role do you guys have in that? How much uplifting do you guys do of that? Is that something even on y'all's radar?
Beyond on our radar, I think, the beauty of storytelling too is you can't tell a story to yourself, right? You need an audience, even if it's one other person. And that interlink is found also where we want our clubs to, if anything, we'd rather clubs tell us too many potential stories that they love the league to go in and promote, because they're excited about what's happening, whether that be a player story, a coach story, a fan in the community, how the club and the community are coming together, things like that. So we rely a lot on our clubs reaching out. Obviously, if anything, there's a bit of overload nowadays in storytelling, sometimes through social media, but we're also able to learn a lot from clubs who are out promoting themselves. And if we find it as something that we really think we can help amplify from the league level, we'll obviously reach out to the club, and we've got those inroads with the right staff members at the club to dive in further, from an interview to a bit of a further detailed article, all of that. I mean, in the end, the sport and sports in general is storytelling. And yes, it's primarily through the lens of the competitiveness between two teams on the field, but especially I think within the W League, particularly with the incredible growth of women's soccer in this country, the stories are just beginning, right? And we can't wait to look back in a decade at a player who maybe played in the first couple iterations of the W League season, and now they're scoring goals for the women's national team, winning World Cups. And we're confident that that's going to be there at some point. So, it's those level of stories, but also a story of a club doing something and working with a philanthropic organization in their local community, and that's changing lives locally. It's that, that local flavor and national and even global flavor we really enjoy trying to tell.
I mean, we talked about there's going to be a new champion this year. Talk about the past champions, and you talk about them expanding and going elsewhere. I mean, it felt like for 2 years and 3 years now, Tormenta every single year is saying, "Oh, a new player's gone to Europe. A new player's gone to Europe. Someone's gone to the Super League. They're gone to NWSL. They're going." Same thing with the Indy 11, where Indy 11 just keeps on saying, "Oh, new person going to Europe. New person at Manchester United. New person here." And it's overwhelming how much talent we're on these championship teams. But there were teams that pushed them to the very end, and there's also going to be players who played them in the first round of the playoffs or played them in the regular season that said, I played against 5 women who went on to Europe. And that's also cool in of itself.
To kind of add on to that player who hopefully they even get a professional opportunity at some point, because everyone's opportunities don't come at the same time. We want those players to go back, whether they go pro or not, to go back, and whether they are raising their kids in the future, to coaching in the game, to working and wanting to go on the front office side. I'll touch on that in a second with our Ballard W League announcement yesterday, with some very prominent players coming into the ownership. But we want those players to go back and be their own mini storytellers to the next generation, right? And it's not rocket science, but we hope that excitement can be fostered through the W League and through these individual clubs. Again, whether a player lifted the W League and went on to play pro, or a player was in the regular season and just got to experience that competition against some of these athletes, we hope that everybody has an opportunity to go back and foster that next generation of the sport, because that's ultimately what we all need, particularly in the women's game where there's still so much momentum. We want to continue to capture that.
You kind of mentioned Ballard, and there was a lot of things I wanted to discuss with just them, because last year they win League Two, and one of the if people did not watch that match, go find a replay, because it's one of the best matches I have watched all year long. 2023 was unbelievable. They have grown a lot as a club. You also see Pittsburgh bringing in their own women's team, and the Riverhounds have done a lot of things the right way on the professional side. So to bring that in, to have clubs who are already established in the ecosystem bring in a women's club, how big of a I almost don't want to say incentive, but how much of a push do you guys have of that, of like, you should really consider this?
Yeah, it's a great one, Kaylor. I think the most important thing, and this is not something that I force in, but it's just built into how we think about it, especially if it's a club that's in the ecosystem or has been existing, that let's say the main team or the only team they have is a men's team. It is never an afterthought on bringing a women's team in. The involvement that we have on, and ultimately and thankfully, I think proof is in the representatives of the membership across the league, the intentionality around the right people coming on board to the club or within the club being a part of it. This is that equal representation, but more importantly, the right investment, because there is so much opportunity that we're seeing from Richmond Ivy this year and their fans. Obviously, the Oakland Soul. I mean, we could go on forever, and it's not just those that get the multiple thousands of fans to the game. Obviously, that's such an incredible accomplishment. It's the incredible talent that we've already covered on this call. So within our ecosystem, I think at this point, thankfully, in a good way, the word is out. So clubs are talking, clubs are watching, whether they have friendly rivalries, whether they're co-members in another league within USL. In a good way, the interest is there. And now, most importantly for us, it's coming along, as I mentioned about my role and the role that we do here at the office. It's coming alongside them and leading where we need to lead, and following and supporting where we need to follow, so that they can build something special within the W League, moving forward.
One thing that I've been really blessed to do has been able to go out and go to the Legion WFC matches, right? And I've gotten a lot of just kind of like text and messages and stuff like that, of like people who listen to the USL show or my own personal show that I do, and they'll talk about how their like young sons and young daughters go to the W League matches, and they'll find a player on that team, and they care more about that team. They care more about those players than they even do the men's professional side. And it's like, this is so cool. Like, I just love that there's just a different shine, because I think a lot of people are starting to fully comprehend the women's game is awesome. Like, if you have not watched it, it is awesome. It is just so much fun to watch. You mentioned teams getting multiple thousands of people. Let's go to your hometown in Dothan, right? Where Dothan have been putting on a masterclass of building a club. Like 5,000 people they've been getting. Coach Carl is known to like build clubs. He is incredible at it. For you, I know you say you have no biases and all that kind of stuff, but when you look at your hometown and you see what they've done in Dothan, Alabama, and some people are saying, what's a Dothan? Good point, right? Most people have not heard of Dothan, and yet they're pulling multiple thousands of people to these matches. How cool is that for you?
Oh man, and I'll try and keep this as short as I can, and not quite get on my monologue. It's something that we're all involved in building this sport, and within USL, from leagues to clubs, we're very grateful we get to do it on a pretty substantial level. I mean, it's our responsibility, but it's also our passion, and certainly passion leading it, and then that fuels the responsibility to then be able to do it in my own hometown. That while I moved away from that at a pretty early age, there is still something special about knowing where you're born and having a passion for it. So to be able to work with their ownership group, watch them, give them guidance and support, but watch them thrive within the community. And then I was able to go there a couple weeks ago for a game. It's really indescribable, because seeing the level of just love and passion for the club, and yet it's really love and passion for Dothan, because the club's also saying we are just representing Dothan through the lens of soccer and providing that entertainment opportunity. And so that's just really where, for me to be able to, experience that adds fuel to when we're working with people in their own hometown looking to maybe start a club or start at least a team in USL as an existing organization. I can fully relate to that passion that they have for their community, and also hope that we can make sure they do have that passion, because it by no means is checking boxes and simply showing up to a stadium and throwing a tweet or a post out there and thinking everyone's going to come. It takes a lot of work and a lot of buy-in. And you mentioned some great people from the coaching staff building a great roster. So it's just special. And obviously it allows us to recognize what it means to most of, if not all of our clubs across our ecosystem and their own community. And I think ultimately that's where this sport will continue to thrive in our country, where we have obviously the major markets and major teams in that, but also what we see around the world. To your point, even about the young boys and girls watching the WFC games in Birmingham, obviously watching even their League Two team and of course their championship team, relating to those individuals, relating to the club is so much richer for them than simply only being able to watch the sport on TV. It really just changes their perspective. And that's really what we kind of feel there's a bit of secret in our sauce within our ecosystem to have that.
We're about a week away from my favorite social media post that the USL puts out all year long, which is the League Two playoff bracket. It's my favorite. It's so ridiculous. It looks so dumb, but it's my favorite thing, because every single year there's somebody that goes through and tries to predict all the matches, and it cracks me up. So I want to go through the list of already clinched. Okay. Asheville City, AHFC Royals, Corpus Christi FC, Little Rock Rangers, Nona FC, Tennessee SC, Ocean City Nor'easters, Seacoast United Phantoms, Long Island Rough Riders, Western Mass Pioneers, SC United Bantams, Salem City FC, Midwest United, Des Moines Menace. We got Flint City Bucks, Poria City SC, Flatirons FC, Albion SC Colorado, Ventura County Fusion. Welcome back after a championship season a couple years ago, and United PDX. There's other teams that can still make the playoffs. That's not completed. I'm not going to go through all of them because it's like 20 more names, but they are big teams. Like we've talked about Ballard already. We can go through Project 510, which again, we're going to be out there soon. San Francisco Glens have been out there. Lions Bridge is a team that was in the finals last year, are on outside looking in. Fort Wayne FC have created a big name for themselves. So on, so on, so on, forever and ever. Amen. The League Two season, how is that going on y'all's side?
It's a behemoth, as you even just mentioned, teams that have clinched, potential teams that'll clinch, and that's only our 32-team playoff. And we even have we created a little bit of a unique structure this year with a kind of pre-first round playoff round to account for the amount of teams we have in our Eastern Conference. And we were grateful to work with our executive committee, which is a leadership group of clubs. We have the same on the W League. They are core to what we try and interact with our clubs and strategically plan. It's the largest season we've ever had, and we've been able to say that each of the last couple years. But I think you talked about the competitiveness is incredible. Obviously, we've already covered that on the W League side. We're going to have a brand new winner in the W League. Let's see about on the League Two side. You've got plenty of past winners already in. You've got past winners trying to make the playoffs here in the last week. So it's been so exciting. I think all the things we've talked about from the stories that we're seeing. You mentioned Tennessee SC. They're obviously in the W League Final Four. They've made playoffs. Albion Hurricanes made it on both sides. So really encouraging to see clubs that have built incredible rosters on both the men's and women's if they have that opportunity. So those are always cool storylines for us to see. And yet, even the ones that you've mentioned, the amount of communities that we all probably wouldn't be talking about if they didn't have a soccer club and we didn't, work and cover and love the sport. And I think that's also the unique flair that we see represented from clubs' brands to where they play to the talent that they go after. And that, again, kind of is that kaleidoscope of what makes this the beautiful game. So League Two is going to be a behemoth this year in terms of playoffs. We're really encouraged. We're confident. We already know where we'll be going to with some of the playoffs. I absolutely, and I'll just go ahead and say I cannot say that for a multitude of reasons, but we've got some really exciting locations, some well-known locations that we've been to in the past that put on a terrific show. And, similar to what we did with the W League for League Two playoffs, the first 2 weekends, because there's a total of 3 weekends of playoffs, the first 2 weekends, we call them pods, where one club is hosting 3 other clubs, and you've got the 2 matchups on one night, and then the 2 winners stay in the market so that we work on player welfare, so that they're not traveling a bunch in a very short amount of time, so that they can be well rested in that day between, and then compete for whether that be the conference final or then another round. So just really excited to see another. The years come and go so quick, but whether it be new clubs, new stories, new front runners, clubs that are not, maybe accomplishing as much as they thought from the prior year. It's all the excitement that, that makes up both W League and obviously in this instance, League Two.
We talk about all the great, and there is a lot of great, which means there's not a lot. I mean, there's always stuff to improve, right? But there's not a whole lot of bad things going on, from the surface level. But, whenever there is something that needs to be improved, it becomes so much more heightened because everything else is going so well. One thing that, what I try to do on the USL show is I'll watch one match from each conference every week. So that way I can get an idea of what's going on. And despite the partnership you guys have with the NBC Sports Play, which is an incredible partnership, and I absolutely love that everything's right there, there's still a lot of clubs that don't stream their matches. And there's a lot of times where there's just nothing available and there's no video evidence that it happened. You're just kind of hoping that the league score is right. How do you have that conversation with clubs of this is important for you to do?
Wow, great topic, and not at all afraid to highlight where we got to improve. I think that's also, if you're not finding excitement actually in improving, and this is probably back to my playing days as well, you've got to work hard and recognize where you can get better and see it as an opportunity. From a streaming standpoint, it's been a strategic goal of ours for a number of years, even prior to the pandemic. And again, when you talk about big systems and organizations that are also growing, we have to take time to make sure we, at least to the best of our ability, and I say we, meaning the league, but really thinking and working even with the clubs, the streaming or the broadcast strategy to allow for fan development, to build the pedigree of the league, which benefits all clubs, most importantly, or equally important, of course, the players and the talent on the field. So I think you make a good point that what we decided and really worked on, this bit of insight is we were not able to finalize that we were going to be on Sports Engine Play for this 24 season, both in League Two and W. It took longer than we wanted, and we made that clear to the clubs. And because of that, our expectation for what clubs should be able to also grow to meet the desire and the strategy of having as many games, and in the future, all games on that platform, we did allow for not every game to have to be streamed by clubs. It's part of the phased approach of doing something and asking clubs that are independent operators, while they're working with us and abiding by certain standards, we also have to think about how they can make it and accomplish it in a reasonable manner, cost, bandwidth, personnel, all the things that go into it. So we're excited to continue to raise that standard going into 25. We talk to our clubs about it a lot. That'll be a lot of education first and foremost, but also expectation as we get into the off season and plan for 25. But I think, what you brought up is a great point, and I'm recalling a bit of thought. A couple weeks ago, Vermont Green had a player who was on Sports Center #1, top 10. And part of that was because not only was it the midfield shot that obviously wasn't perfect HD, 4K, whatever level we're at now, they also had an extra camera right near the goal that was able to capture him flicking it up and doing a bike to get Sports Center top 10 and actually #1. So the visibility and also the value that it gives clubs to be amplified is ultimately the core of that strategy, and we're excited to get there. But at the same time, we've got to do it that's reasonable, expectation level for the clubs.
I got two more things for you before I let you go. We kind of talked about it at the very beginning of USL Youth, right? It's the brand new, that's so dumb the way I think about this. It's a new colorway added to the USL system. We got a bright yellow with a giant Y. This is a new branch from the green color, the academy system, right? You guys go from U11 up to U19 for the boys and girls side. What's the difference between the USL-Y and the USL Academy? And, what's the vision for a USL Youth going forward?
Yeah, great topic. And one that we, even myself personally don't get to always talk about as much, particularly on these platforms, which I appreciate you, Kaylor, doing the due diligence and asking the question. It's awesome. And your listeners are hopefully grateful for it. The unique thing, and I think this is partly down to the core of actually a rebrand. So USL has operated Super Y League. And for a lot of people, it was something actually that we launched in 1999 as an organization, many iterations of USL ago. And it, like many things in youth soccer, has had a lot of fluidity to it, a lot of flexibility as the sport has developed, as professional soccer has grown. That's changed the ecosystem, I think, all for the better. But sometimes, when you're in the middle of it, kind of putting the puzzle pieces together, there's some clarity and there's some vagueness. So as USL has grown, and this kind of maybe is also a tie bow on my role, every day the goal is, what can we, myself, our team, do to make each individual league as strong and as valuable to soccer, to our members, as possible, but also individually as a league, how can it work together for the collective growth of what USL is doing? And that's ultimately what I'm charged to do in my role. And so a lot of people, and perfect question, a lot of people didn't understand that Super Y League was operated, was owned technically by USL. And so when we decided to rebrand, it really was utilizing the power and the growing desire and excitement around USL, and putting that in place or on top of as a rebrand for Super Y League. I think the key though for a rebrand is also, it can't just be, for lack of a better term, lipstick on a pig. What's the next vision growth? And that's even where we went away from, while it is USL Youth, there's not league next to it. It is a league platform for kids to compete in general summer months, depending on the weather, depending on the area of the country. But most importantly for us, it's a platform. And the goal of the platform isn't to tell every young boy or girl at 11, 12, 15 years old that, hey, if you're in this league, it's pro or bust. No, our goal is through USL Youth is to be a platform that engages the American soccer generation. Those all the different times we talked about earlier where the players moving on, make sure they give back, right? Make sure they inspire the next generation. Well, at USL, from a league level, that's how we give this platform of USL Youth to tell the stories that are happening in Championship, Super League, League One, Two, and W, and Academy, but to youth soccer players who are playing hopefully because they love it, because they love and dream to go pro. But as we know, and these are reality checks, a lot of them, most of them won't, but we want them to stay in the game. We want them to have a good experience and potentially go be an owner if they're successful at business of a club, or work in the front office, or coach. So it's really about inspiring that next generation. And we're able to do it through USL Youth. And we're excited to continue to see that property or platform or league, whatever we want to call it, evolve into the future.
Last thing before I let you go, thank you so much for coming on. And we have obviously we've been talking to Joel Nash at USL Nash on Twitter, X, 240 character app, whatever you want to call it nowadays. You between W League, USL League 2, all this kind of stuff, you are looking at a 12 to 14 week sprint in the middle of the summer of just from preseason starting to the finals. It is just like 12 to 14 weeks of chaos. When the final ends, are you just taking like a giant nap and just like finding comfort food, comfort TV show, or are you still like grinding?
And I certainly hope it doesn't sound facetious. I drink a good amount of coffee, and most importantly, we love what we do. So it is an immediate. Of course, we celebrate and enjoy it, but it is absolutely an immediate turn our attention to whatever the top priority is, from planning for 25. We've got a lot of things that we need to look at in a good, exciting way, from competition structures to expansion and new growth, to potential partnerships, all of that. So that all fuels the excitement for what we get to do. And yes, you have to make sure you keep your batteries charged, but thankfully what we get to do here keeps those batteries pretty high level. And yeah, so we'll turn our attention there, and obviously celebrate whoever comes out victorious and all the other stories and incredible clubs that we've gotten to work with. So yeah, I'm sure I'll try and take a break, but it probably won't happen, and we'll keep moving on and enjoy what we're doing.
Nowhere worse to recharge your batteries than Tampa Bay, Florida, right?
It's a tough one. Yeah. Getting out on the beach and enjoying the sunshine and water helps you kind of do that. And it's in our own backyard. So,
Joel, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate you taking your time. I know you have a lot of stuff going on. Really appreciate you really just talking about the growth of the semi-professional side of this, man.
Kaylor, thank you. This has been a pleasure. So thank you for what you do, and amplifying this sport and allowing us to tell, our stories and our journeys. And, obviously just grateful that we, got the time today, and I'm sure we'll get to do this here in the future, and we'll be talking about whatever the next wave of stories are. So thanks again for having me.
And thank you all so much for listening. Go show some love to Joel. Go watch your local club, watch your W League and your USL League 2 club. It's an absolute blast. I promise you'll enjoy it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Till next time, guys. I'm not going to do Alan's voice. You don't want to hear that. So see ya.